Beer. That golden, frothy liquid that has inspired poetry, fueled questionable karaoke performances, and somehow managed to taste even better after mowing the lawn. But what if I told you that thousands of years ago, the ancient Egyptians were already brewing beer, and their secret ingredient wasn't just grain but bread? Yes, bread, as in the same thing you make toast with. Today we're traveling back to the banks of the Nile to uncover how beer and bread became the ultimate power couple in history. And we'll be asking, why on earth did Egyptians decide to soak their loaves in water and call it a drink? Well, get comfortable, maybe crack open a cold one because you're about to learn the boozy truth, right here on History of Food. If you think modern craft beer fans are passionate, arguing over hops, malt profiles, and whether pineapple belongs in an IPA, ancient Egyptians make them look casual. Beer wasn't just a Friday night indulgence, it was daily life. Rich or poor, everyone drank it. Laborers on the pyramids, paid partly in beer, priests at temples, brewing beer for offerings. Even children drank it because, unlike the Nile's water, beer was actually safer. Imagine sending your kid to school with a lunchbox and a tiny clay jug of ale. Not exactly Capri Sun, but hey, it worked. To the Egyptians, beer was food, drink, and medicine wrapped into one. It had calories, it had liquid, and it was considered a gift from the gods. Some texts even credited the goddess Hathor with inventing it, which means, in Egyptian mythology, beer wasn't a frat house invention, but literally divine. Now let's get to the juicy, or should I say, foamy part. How exactly do you brew beer with bread? First, you have to understand that bread and beer were basically culinary siblings. Both started with the same ingredients: grains, usually barley and emmer wheat. Egyptians figured out that if you took bread dough and let it ferment, you could get two very different results. Bake it, and you've got bread. Soak it, ferment it, and you've got beer. It's like one of those choose-your-own-adventure books, except both endings still fill you up. The typical Egyptian beer recipe wasn't written down in cookbooks. Papyrus cookbooks weren't exactly trending, but archaeologists have pieced it together. They'd bake a special kind of bread, dense, undercooked, and packed with grain. This wasn't your nice, crusty sourdough. It was more like a chewy cereal brick. Then they'd crumble or soak it in water, let the natural yeasts do their thing. And voila, fermentation began. Sometimes they'd add dates or herbs to boost flavor and sugar content, because even ancient brewers knew nobody wants bland beer. Here's what it might have looked like. Step 1. The bread. Bake loaves from barley or emmer wheat, half-baked, almost porridge-like inside. Step 2. The mash. Break the bread apart and soak it in large vats of water. Step 3. The magic. Wild yeast, naturally floating in the air, kicks in. Fermentation starts and sugars from the bread turn into alcohol. Step 4. Flavoring. Toss in dates, herbs, or spices for sweetness and variety. Step 5. Strain and serve. Strain out the chunky bits, leaving behind a thick, cloudy liquid. The result? Egyptian beer wasn't the crisp golden drink we know today. It was thick, almost like a smoothie. Beer you could practically chew. But people loved it, and it gave them calories and hydration. Honestly, it sounds like the world's first meal replacement shake, just with a little buzz. Unlike today's world, where some beers are priced like rare wines, Egyptian beer was for everyone. Workers on pyramid construction sites were given daily rations: bread, onions, and beer. And when I say beer, I don't mean a tiny cup. Some estimates suggest laborers received up to 4 liters of beer a day. 4 liters. Imagine trying to build a massive stone monument in the desert heat after drinking that much. Either Egyptians had insane tolerance, or their beer was lower in alcohol than ours. Probably both. Beer wasn't just a paycheck, though. It was also part of religious rituals. Gods got beer offerings, tombs were stocked with beer for the afterlife, and festivals often flowed with the stuff. In fact, there's a myth that beer literally saved humanity. When the goddess Sekhmet went on a rampage, planning to destroy mankind, Ra tricked her by dyeing beer red to look like blood. She drank it, got too drunk to continue her slaughter, and passed out. And just like that, beer saved the world. So next time you raise a pint, just remember, you're part of a long tradition of beer-based problem solving. Beer wasn't just about survival or religion, it was social glue. Taverns existed, where people gathered to drink and chat. It crossed social boundaries. Kings drank it, farmers drank it, women brewed it, and kids sipped watered-down versions. In some ways, beer was the great equalizer of Egyptian society. But don't picture glass bottles or pint glasses. Egyptians drank beer from ceramic jars, often using straws made of reeds to filter out the floating grain chunks. Drinking through a straw wasn't just fun, it was necessary if you didn't want a mouthful of soggy bread bits. Honestly, Egyptians may have been the first people to realize that straws make drinks way more enjoyable. Now let's be clear, Egyptian beer wouldn't pass at your local pub. It was cloudy, chunky, and probably sour. It had little foam, no carbonation, and an unpredictable alcohol content. Think less crisp lager and more fermented barley smoothie with a hint of date syrup. Not exactly something you'd want at happy hour, and yet archaeologists and experimental brewers today have tried recreating it. They report that while the taste is unusual, it's surprisingly drinkable, and it gives insight into why Egyptians loved it so much. After all, compared to unsafe Nile water, a slightly tangy bread-beer combo was not only safer, but tastier. What's fascinating is how bread and beer weren't just food. They were survival strategies. Grains could spoil or rot, but turning them into bread and beer preserved them. Beer, especially, was a clever way to make grains last, provide hydration, and deliver calories. It was practical and delicious, a perfect example of necessity creating culture. And that's probably why bread and beer show up so often together in Egyptian art. Tomb paintings show people baking, brewing, and feasting. Hieroglyphs depict bread loaves and beer jars as essential offerings. If someone in the afterlife had to choose between a golden chariot and a bottomless beer jug, odds are they'd go for the jug. Egypt's beer culture didn't vanish with the pharaohs. The Greeks and Romans later admired Egyptian brewing, and beer's legacy traveled across cultures. While wine eventually overshadowed beer in elite circles, the groundwork was laid in Egypt. That idea that grains could be transformed into both bread and beer spread throughout the world. Fast forward a few thousand years and humans are still obsessed with tweaking grains into delicious drinks. From hazy IPAs to craft lagers, every pint you sip today has a little Egyptian history bubbling inside it. And even if we've upgraded from clay jars and straws to pint glasses and six-packs, the basic idea hasn't changed. Bread and beer are still two sides of the same coin. So, how did Egyptians brew beer with bread? By turning half-baked loaves into the world's first liquid lunch. They soaked bread in water, let nature's yeast get to work, flavored it with dates and herbs, and created a drink that fueled an empire. Thank you for watching.